All right, everybody, here we go with the notes for Chapter 8. We're talking about the stuff that we put over the airwaves for the consumer to consume, and the strategy of how we do that, why we do that, and getting it out to the consumer. So program managers are responsible for many managerial tasks. We'll talk about some of them here. First off, budgeting. We talked about that in the financial chapter. Program managers need skills in creating and administering budgets, amortizing programming, and conducting break-even analysis for acquired and scheduled content. If you need a review on some of those chapters and some of those definitions, make sure that you go back and review the chapter on financial issues. Now, in addition to that, the programmer must acquire programs. So acquisition is an important part of the job. And usually you're going to do that in consultation with other managers and with corporate leaders, especially if your company is owned by a corporation. Programming can be acquired from a network or from some other production company, acquired in trade or in barter. So we could possibly be looking at either a cash buyout or something where we're looking at sharing commercial inventory. Also, content could be produced internally. An acquisition involves negotiating with producers and distributors on various terms, including costs, including sharing of advertising time, and also the length at which the agreement is going to be enforced. Scheduling, also important. Numerous strategies and considerations are used in scheduling programs for traditional media. The most important being how well the program will attract audiences and advertisers. You don't just stick a program into a time slot because you have a program available and a time slot available. You want to think critically about the programming content, what sort of audience it's going to attract, and therefore, if it's going to mesh well with other programming you have surrounding that particular time slot on that particular day for the particular audiences that are available, and therefore will create attractive numbers for potential advertisers. Evaluation. Program managers use research data, feedback from social media, and other tools to evaluate programming. The evaluation process enables decision-making on whether a radio station may change format, or if a television station and the show that it's looking at will the station will decide whether it's going to move that show or cancel that show or hold on to that show because it happens to be doing well. And interpersonal skills. The programmer's many responsibilities involve interaction with other managers and personnel, as well as the public at large. So a lot of people that the program manager is going to be interfacing with in one way or another for various reasons and various causes. Strong verbal and written communication skills are needed, as well as the ability to work as a team with others. So the program manager has to do a lot of balancing of different personalities with different motives. And it's important to be able to have good relations with all those different groups in order to present the station in the best possible light that you can, as well as having a healthy work environment and a profitable work situation. Now let's talk about radio and audio programming in particular. Audiences commonly identify radio stations by the type of format that they broadcast. You know, someone's favorite station is the country music station, or the urban music station, or the classical music station, or they prefer the local talk station, whatever the case may be. While we do put a lot of emphasis on the identity of a station, the call letters, the frequency at which you dial that in, perhaps various nicknames and things like that. What people are really tuning in for is the content that's being delivered, and usually that's going to be identified by its particular format. Selection of a station format should begin with a careful analysis of the marketplace. What do we mean by that? Well, Let's take a look here. First off, a good market analysis examines factors like the number of other radio stations in the market and their formats. You're also going to look at the ratings of competing stations. You're going to look at the demographic characteristics of your area and also of the particular stations that are already broadcasting in your area. Then you're also going to look at retail expenditures. And basically what that means is looking at market conditions, determining what sort of things are people buying. And that has a lot to do with looking at various demographics, psychographics, that sort of thing. And you're taking all that information and based on what you determine from that information is going to help you to decide what the format of the radio station that you are representing ought to be in order to provide a service to the public and to generate revenue for the station. Format decisions often take one of two approaches in this regard. Some stations attempt to capture an existing audience from another station so that you would be a direct competitor. In Raleigh, a good example of that would be B93.9, which is a country music station going head-to-head against another country music station, 94.7 QDR. The other thing that a station may decide to do is to develop a format to reach an audience that is not being targeted by a competitor, to find a demographic that is being underserved and to provide programming to reach that particular demographic and to appeal to their tastes. So you're going for some untapped potential there where there may not be as much competition and you can own that particular demographic potentially. Target existing audiences. This is something that we really want to try to do. We don't want to try to have to create an audience for our station. We want to look at who is available in the area that we serve, in the area that our signal reaches to, and determine who is out there that might want to listen to what we put out over the air. Advertisers desire certain types of audiences more than others. That is something to consider. Now, generally, 18 to 49 is the age group that a lot of advertisers like because these are independent people. They're younger people that if they can reach them with their advertising, potentially you could have a customer for a long period of time. But there's also challenges to reaching a younger audience as opposed to an older audience that may be more educated, may have more disposable income. But at the same time, older audiences, number one, are going to be more critical of the things that they buy. In other words, taking a look at what's being offered and deciding if it's worth their money. And there's the fact that older people tend to not live as long as younger people. So there is that sort of thing that you have to consider when it comes to what sort of audience you're going to pursue. One other thing to keep in mind, you may want to perhaps develop a niche. This strategy targets an audience not currently being served by an existing station. This can be with rather eclectic sort of tastes or rather particular sort of tastes. This is why you do have various formats that may gather a small audience, but that audience winds up tending to be very loyal to the station because of the format that it provides. Some examples of this would be classical music, jazz music, various religious formats, and various types of talk formats, including conservative talk, liberal talk, and of course, sports talk programming. Some format variables to consider. First off, the technical aspects, how that plays into the strengths that you have as a radio station. FM stations are best suited for music formats, while AM stations tend to emphasize talk and information programming, as well as niche formats or specialty formats. So when you think about it, when we care about the quality of the sound that is coming out, especially when it comes to music, that definitely tends to make a better impact on the FM dial. But if we're talking more about spoken word, the fidelity of the audio quality is not necessarily as important as long as we can understand what is being said. So those formats do tend to work on AM okay. Although in the past 15 years or so, we have started to see more talk-based programming come onto the FM dial as well. As far as talent goes, managers must weigh the costs and benefits of using local talent against those of a syndicated service. And I would add to this as well, perhaps having somebody voice track your local show from somewhere outside of town. That's also an option to consider. Do you want that live local feel, or is it more important to have a certain quality of the content that perhaps you might not be able to get if you try to program in-house? As far as avails are concerned, stations must carefully determine how many minutes to allocate to the sale of commercial time in drive time and in non-drive time. You have to be able to have enough commercials within an hour in order to meet expenses, but you also don't want to put too many commercials in an hour in such a way that you wind up alienating your listeners. So there's a delicate balance that needs to happen there in order to have both your advertisers and your audience satisfied. Also to consider, a format should have strong marketing and promotion potential that appeals to both advertisers and to audiences. So you want to make sure that the identity of your station is well known, that it's visible, quote unquote, whether literally visible with various billboards, going out and about to different events, that sort of thing, but also visible in terms of its presence on the radio dial, the way that people are talking about the station, all that sort of thing. When you put together your program wheel or your hot clock, this should dictate what type of music is being played when, as well as placement of announcer breaks, sweepers, and commercial stop sets. The broadcast hour at most radio stations is going to be regimented in such a way that the program director or the music director is trying to put a strategy together of what types of music within the format are going to work within the course of the broadcast hour. Having a good mix of new music versus recurrence versus the timeless classics, many times called gold standards in many formats. How many songs you have playing together during a music set. How many times the announcer breaks in with his or her chatter, and what the announcers talk about during those times. Doing various promotions or just talking off the cuff, whatever is decided. How many minutes to have in a commercial break? How many promos to air in an hour? How many times the call letters are said throughout the broadcast hour? All of those things are programming decisions. As far as news and public affairs programming goes, this is something that tends to be a bit of a hot potato when it comes to music formats in particular, because the idea of a music station providing news content or public affairs programming tends to break up the overall flow of the station as a whole. However, news content does serve a significant purpose in helping a station meet public interest requirements, and that makes the FCC happy. So there's figuring out how to treat making sure that you are covering various issues of importance in the community and to your audience, and making sure that that has some sort of presence within your broadcast day or broadcast week. Selection of a network, also an important variable. Network material tailored to reflect the station's format and on-air sound. When we're talking about network in the radio environment, generally we're talking about sources for national news. We're also perhaps talking about various types of programming sources for syndicated types of shows, for shows that are aired in multiple markets, and how well they would fit within the overall format of your station, and also to be able to provide some sort of a national connection for your local outlet. Radio's greatest strength lies as a local medium, broadcasting to a specific geographical market. Radio stations involved in their community are likely to be appreciated by listeners and will become a trusted source in a time of need. Stations that tend to not do as well in serving the public interest in providing various local connections, being out and about in the community, are seen as little more than glorified jukeboxes. And many times there's kind of a disfavor that winds up coming as a result of that, because if you wanted a jukebox, well, there's many other resources that you can use to be able to get that. You can tailor make your interests on things like Pandora and Spotify and things like that, and not have to succumb to the whims of a particular radio station that doesn't try to make some sort of connection with its audience other than just the music that it plays. In most markets, the greatest concentration of radio listening takes place in morning drive, the hours between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. in most markets. Sometimes that might be categorized as 5 to 9 in the morning or 5 to 10 in the morning. But basically those hours where people are getting up and getting ready to start their work day and driving into work and listening to the radio while they're on their commute and things like that. And because of this, a radio station's highest paid personalities are most likely going to be found during the morning hours. There are a few exceptions to this, but by and large, you're going to find that the folks making the most money on the programming side of things in radio are those that are responsible for the morning drive programming. Stations build on the success of their morning program to attract audiences throughout the day. So the rest of the programming is somehow going to not only complement the format, but also try to point people towards that morning program in one way or another. Advertisers use radio as a cost-efficient medium to supplement other marketing efforts. Radio these days tends to be one of several different advertising strategies that businesses will use in such a way that they know that certain advertising media are going to be effective in different ways. So they use the strengths of radio to their advantage to complement what they might do in television or in print or in online advertising. From a management perspective, radio still has the ability to generate positive profit margins for stations with clear target audiences, good technical facilities, solid brands, and a strong digital strategy. No longer can traditional media ignore what's happening online. They need to participate and play along. On one aspect, it's kind of, if you can't beat them, join them. But there's also that sense that nowadays, a lot of people are looking for information online, and that includes information about their local media. So radio stations that tend to have a strong presence on various social media tend to have various services and clips available on their website or on other platforms will tend to fare fairly well as they know their audience, as they develop content for their audience, not just through their radio signal, but through other avenues as well. That's going to do it for this part. We'll pick up with part 3 of the notes over on part B. We'll catch you over on that video.